okay, and 5.4 has this validation that was added, and in 5.3 what we did is the beacon wasn't there. You had to enable the beacon enable.
To respond or to act as a beacon?
To respond.
To respond? So we have
there
to
you go.
manually.
So what you're saying is that the unconfigured NID doesn't trust anything without a domain with the newer code.
Oh, but if we put the domain in, we're fine. On 5.3.
Then it's assuming.
Yeah, you don't have to go to all the remotes. No.
Okay.
We thought about it. The auto configuration is off by default. What? Okay. So is everybody good with the beacon? I know. It's a very exciting part of your day, I can tell. So basically from here, once we're here, what can we do? We can right click on here and open as a new tab and connect to that unit. Once we get through all these security loops. Okay. So we log in here, we created the bridge, we created a beacon out this guy, we turned on advertisement, we were in inventory, so we sent the beacon went out over here, this guy got an address, we sent an advertisement back over here, populated the database. From my laptop I was able to see that database, right click on the IP address of the unit, open as a new tab, and now I'm connected to this unit and this unit. So that's the most basic example of how to configure and how to use the in-band management. So now we're in the remote location. Okay, so let's see what else we got over here. The system. So that's interfaces. So everybody okay with interfaces? That's how we, add bridges, network interfaces, and we could add a whole bunch of sub-interfaces to this as well. We could have another network for VLAN 4001, another network for VLAN 4002, add them all in there. We could have 63 interfaces in here. Also down here you'll see we have route options. Okay, this can be used if you want to limit who can access the management of the unit. By using routes, instead of a gateway or whatever, you can manage which networks have access to the NIDs. DNS, we want to change the NID name. Now if you look up here, our name went from the serial number, it actually has a name up there. Time. So this is where we could do all our fancy NTP stuff. So I'm going to use this guy as an NTP server. Time now. Select. Enable NTP server. Well, let's just take a look over here at a few things while we're here. Let me go into this guy here. So he's now my NTP server. Basically, I set the date and time. You can see over here now it has the proper date and time. And all I have to do really is check off the NTP server. Let's go over to the other guy now, make him the NTP client. So what do I need? I need to add this server. This guy here is 2.100, the one that's going to be the actual server. I'm going to add it in there. Now here we have some options. NTP server configuration, time intervals, and number of messages. So if you have 5.2, you don't have this, but 5.4, you have this option. And basically what this is how often you're going to go query the NTP server and how many messages you're going to use. So you could use like 10 and 10, so it'll go every 10 seconds and send 10 messages. And that will help it synchronize a little faster. If you have an unstable network, that might cause a lot of corrections. So it's really a gain here. But I'm just going to put 10 and 10 for now. I'm going to select this server and apply. So every 10 seconds, I'm going to send 10 messages, and this is the server I've selected to talk to.
So, I mean, let's say we have the one's function as the NTP server. It's kind of one of the things we would look at, which just was the scalability. How many of the remote NIDs you have? You know, so setting that timer on the remote NID really will affect that.
We have them running with about 800 to 900
Off
off of one NTP server. One NID being NTP server, and 900 clients.
Okay.
So I know we did some calculations, and 1,000 should be fine. We haven't had customers reach 1,000. 800, 900 seems to be the ones that we see here.
But it's really the last time we were asked, I guess, asked about that, they were saying like 100 or something like that. 800 to 900 scales a little better.
Yes. Might have been some confusion over how many sessions are supported with PAA, because that is definitely 100. The client, it should be a lot more. So now that we've done that, so we see over here, he's actually gotten the correct time now. So he's actually talking to the NTP server. Is he synchronized enough to start giving us some one-way delay measurements? No. As we see over here in the 5.4 now, he's telling us the status. This wasn't there in the older versions, but it's telling us he's not synchronized yet. So we'll let that simmer while we do other stuff. Now, another nice option over here is console. So if you have this unit set up in a location that's not secure, there's all sorts of people going around, that serial port on the back, you can disable it. So that somebody can't jack in and start taking a look at your configuration or whatever. Could be top secret stuff, so you can disable that. Mode. So this is where we have our different aggregation modes. 3 to 1, 2 to 1. If ever you need to use aggregation, we got the IGFP version you might want to use for using PAA with IGFP, and also what your SVLAN is going to be. So your SVLAN, you want to use a standard 88A8, or you want to use the Cisco 9100. And once you've applied that, it's global. So whenever you set an SVLAN, it's going to use this everywhere in the NID. So this is a global setting for everything in regarding the SVLAN type. Now, over here in the aggregation mode, if you decide, you know, I'm using this scenario like this, and this is my client port over here, and everybody's happy and it's well, and then all of a sudden they say, you know what, we want to use 2 client ports over here because we're going to have another office over here, and we're going to put another device, and blah, 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 so we want to use client 1 and client 2. So can you change that NID of mine that's in standard mode to aggregator mode? Just remember, when you change them from standard to aggregator, you're going to lose all your configuration except for your management. It'll keep the management information so you can get back to it, but all your policies and your filters, it's all gone. Because basically, at that point, it's going to create new policies and everything for this new port arrangement, so you have to reconfigure all that after. Okay? So if you're doing aggregation, it's best to configure it first and then just add your information after. Okay, time console. Let's take a look at alarms. So under the alarms, basically, you know, you got your soak times and your threshold, and you can enable or disable different alarming. You know, you can have your enable lead reporting and so forth. You can turn it off. configuration, like any good equipment, you can go in and change the severity of the alarms if you want, change if they're service affecting or non-service affecting, and you can change the the alarm text in here. Add whatever you want in there. Some customers, regarding the delay and delay measurements, the alarms they change into customers' experience will be impacted. Customers' experience is now negative, blah, 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 so that the people that are monitoring the alarms know, oh, this means something, I better get somebody to start taking a look at this. CASI tab is kind of a useful tab as well. So it shows us basically what power we're using. Right now I'm using the 5 volts. These 2 feeds are not hooked up. It gives me the internal temperature of the unit. So the unit right now is at 50 degrees. And we have the thresholds at which the unit will alarm. So this is not the minus 40 to plus 65. This is the internal board of the unit, what temperature it's at. And these thresholds cannot be set or user configured. Basically at 85 there will be a first alarm, and then at 90 there will be the second alarm. The unit will not shut down. It will keep on working, just let you know it's getting very, very hot. We have some units in the desert where this alarm actually did come on. Agents. So here we have our good old syslog. So under the syslog, this is something, if you're working with us or working with support or even working amongst yourselves, trying to figure out something went wrong, something happened, syslog is always a good place to start. If you have a unit that's been giving you intermittent problems, maybe your customer that loses 2 packets every 3 months and calls you once in a while, you might want to.
Frank.
We told him about
You know where he's going next week, guys.
So you could put different levels, right? You could put this at debug, and it's going to be very verbose, give you lots of information. Is there any danger leaving it at debug? Are you going to crash the unit? No, you're not. It's not like, on a router where who left the syslog at debug and now everything's slow. Don't worry about it. You can leave it at debug if you want. It's just very verbose. It might give you more information than you need, but you can do that if you want. Now the syslog will roll eventually. So, there's only so much space where it's going to keep syslog information. If the unit does not have a lot of alarms happening and a lot of problems happening, your syslog could go for months. If you have a condition that keeps repeating, your syslog might roll after a few days or a few hours even if there's a lot of activity happening. So to get past that, if you have to keep all these logs, we do support the remote syslog enablement. So basically you just put that on, put in the IP address of your remote syslog server, and it will send all the syslogs real time. Whenever they come in, they'll be forwarded to the syslog server. The next tab, maybe you guys are wondering, anybody know what this is? Echo 8. What is that, a special loopback? No. Basically, it's a company in Sweden called Cranord, and they make a system called the EchoVault system. And they use our hardware as the device that sends the data to their monitoring software. So we put an agent in there, it's called the Echo agent, that sends this information to the EchoVault server. So you're using SNMP to do gets and get the information. Some customers use this application, and we push the data to that server using this agent. History. This is another option. As you grow, right now you have 50, 60, 100 units, you're doing gets and everything's working well. If it gets to the point where all these gets and SNMP start to slow down, we also have the option of sending history buckets. So we can send a bucket every 15 minutes, and in that bucket we can have one 15-minute sample where we could have the min, max, and average for that 15 minutes. Or we can break it up into 1-minute slices, so you get 15 1-minute slices in that 15-minute chunk. So you have 1 minute min, 1 minute max, and 1 minute average, so you'll get 15 of them every 15 minutes. So that's another option as well. And those history buckets are going to be there for everything, whether it's PAA for delays, regulators for throughput, policies for counting the packets being forwarded, delay measurements with Y1731, packet loss with Y1731, simulated loss measurement, and service availability can all be measured in the unit and sent out every 15 minutes. Service availability is kind of a new one. We'll take a look at that. Basically, we're going to be taking the delay variation, and packet loss, and coming up with a formula that says what service availability we've determined is good enough to be yes or no. Service is available, yes, service is not available. And down here we have the scheduling where we can forward these buckets, every once a day, every hour, every 15 minutes is the most granular, and once a day would be about the less. So SNMP, this is where you would set up your SNMP configuration for the being able to receive the information from the server, turning on the SNMP here, and then the traps. So the traps is where we're going to be sending. Do you guys use the SNMP traps? Okay. So we can have up to 10 trap receivers for SNMP version 2. Oh, maybe just 8, and then some version 1s and an auto. Basically, yeah, it's just basically we can send it up to all these different locations for the traps. Why so many? We have customers that have a lot of trap receivers. So, okay. Maintenance. So this is where we do our upgrades, and we do support a rollback. So right now this unit's at the newest firmware, like 5.4. When 5.4.0.1 comes out, we could upgrade to 5.4.0.1, and 5.4 will go back to our rollback version. And if for some reason we're not happy with the way things are going, roll back, it'll go back to the previous version. When it rolls back, so let's say today I'm at 5.4 and I upgrade to 5.4.0.1, and a week later we want to roll back. Any configuration changes I did during that week will not happen in the rollback. The rollback will roll back to exactly what it was at the last time it was at 5.4. Okay? So it rolls back to firmware, and it rolls back to the configuration what it was at that point in time. Configuration, backup, import, export. So here we're looking at the GUI, right? So you're logged into the GUI, and you want to config export, and we'll call this INS, and you export the file. And we're just going to save it. Okay. That's it. So we've now saved the file. We want to import that file, browse, grab the file, so it'll say the file's okay, the configuration's okay, blah, blah, blah. On the next reboot, that's the configuration it'll take. What's important, if you have a backup, let's say you're working in the field and amongst yourselves, you're saying, I don't know what happened, this is not working the way I should, give me the backup. So you do the backup export, you give it to your friend who's going to try it in his lab or at his desk or whatever. It has to be the same hardware, so if you took the backup from a TE, you have to put it into a TE. And it has to be the same firmware. If you took the backup with 5.4, the unit that you're putting it into has to have 5.4. That's it. Everything else doesn't matter. If you send a backup to us, put a user password in there we can use. Because if you have your username password that's security for your for your network, and you don't want to give it to us, I understand that. So if you're about to send us a backup, maybe just create a user admin, do the backup, send it to us, then delete it, so that way we can log in with admin and do the testing that we have to do. Okay. This is where you can factory default the unit, you can roll back the configuration, cancel changes. So if I made a change, it'll just be the changes as when I was logged in. There's no commit. If you're used to working with Cisco, or you do a write or anything like that. Here, as soon as you do something, it's written and it's done. There's no save after. There's no config T to be in that mode or whatever. It's as soon as you're in, you change.
On the roadmap, there is something from the CLI standpoint to do, like a show run.
Yes.
That should help.
That will help a lot.
Automate configuration backups.
Yes. because the file, the configuration backup that we just did, it's not a show run. It's basically this long file with all the parameters and what's been changed from the default value. So the show run is definitely on the roadmap. It's just I thought it was a trivial thing because I've been working. I worked with I did CCNA, CCDA. I worked with Cisco routers for 4 or 5 years every day of my life, and then when I started here, I was like, how do I pull it? Where is it? And so now what you have to do is you have to build a script with the CLI for what if you have a cookie cutter configuration, you can build it with the CLI, but it's not the same as doing it with the GUI and then just doing a show run and having your script ready to go. So it doesn't add that complexity. Session. So this is where you can take the right lock. So basically we have that little lock over here, or you can come over here and hit right lock. So right unlock, I'm letting it go. So now, and then right lock, I would take it back. Okay. Users, so basically you can set up users and permissions. And what do you do after that? You associate users with permissions. If you get knocked out all the time and you're tired of it, let's put these to 0. It's not forever, it's about 30 minutes. But if you're doing what I'm doing and you get logged off all the time, it can be annoying. So then you have the number of CLI sessions, web sessions, and so forth, total sessions, combination that can be logged into the unit. Usually the defaults are fine. If you do need to change them, you can just change them. Maybe the CLI you might want to increase if you have an EMS or something logging into the unit. And this is where you would go for the, and this is where you can enable Telnet. If you want to use Telnet, this is where you turn it on. And here we have the different authentication orders. So basically local is just going to look here locally. Radius is going to go to the Radius server. Local Radius is going to look local, then Radius. Radius local is going to go to the Radius server, then local. This is probably one of the most common ones, strict Radius, then local. So it'll go to the Radius server. If the Radius server doesn't let you in, that's it. It won't look any further. If for some reason the Radius server is down, then it'll go to local. But not because the Radius server rejected you, because it's down. And here we have our Radius configuration. So you can have 2 servers that are working in a backup. If you do want to use the Radius server, in the help file, there's basically some help that whoever would be configuring the Radius server, it's going to tell them how to set back the callback ID and the service type that can be set as well, the callback ID. So somebody who's a knowledgeable Radius person using this information, will probably be able to get the ball rolling regarding setting up the Radius server to forward the credentials to the NID. Because there's 2 ways, right? You could just have the user authenticated on the Radius server and have the credentials available have the permissions available in the NID, or have the Radius server authenticate the user and forward the permissions as well. The latter is probably the best way because you have nothing to do with the NIDs after that. Okay, so we're still good here. Still got some time before lunch. OAM. So OAM, we talked a bit about this, and OAM is really link level between 2 devices. So we could set up an OAM stack between the NID and a 3COM router, between the NID or a 3COM switch, between the NID and a Fuji device if they support 802.3AH. So we could set all those up and do our link level testing between the 2. Now that we have PAA and Y1731, nobody really does, but you could if you wanted to. OAM is still an important thing because this is what we're going to use to do all the loopbacks. Okay? So if you need to do a loopback, you're out in the field and somebody says, I want to do a loopback on VLAN 100, you're going to go over here into OAM, add, and you say, what port are we doing this on today? I locked myself So we're going to do it on the network port. And there's application notes for all this, so don't worry, you don't have to remember everything by heart. But it's good to see everything once, I think, and then after it's in your brain, and if something happens, it'll go, oh yeah, I remember Greg talking about that. So here we're just going to say network, and I'm not going to change anything else. I don't want to change. I said, oh, I'm doing my loop back on VLAN 100. I don't care. Right here, we're just setting up an OEM instance on a port. So I'm just going to say what port I'm doing it on, and that's it. I'm not going to change any other default. Then I'm going to go to my loopback. This is where it's all going to happen. So if I'm using a test set, this is where I'd say, okay, I'm working with with the guys in the field, and they got a VEX. So I'm going to enable the VEX, and here is where I would say accept tags. So on the other one, I don't set up a VLAN on the OEM instance, but when I set up to receive the loopback, I'm saying accept tag loopbacks as well. So whether it's tagged or untagged, it'll accept it. Or you could say I want to do a manual loopback. Okay, so I want to use layer 2 filters, and I want to use my VLAN 200. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to enable that loopback. I'm going to swap the MAC. I'm doing it layer 2. I don't need to do this, but if I want. Drop opposite traffic, so that means the traffic's not going to keep going through. I'm going to stop that traffic. So I don't want to do that. I want to let the opposite traffic go through. This here could be a real time saver. Loop back timeout in minutes. Okay, so if it's been a long week and you're on the call and another call and another call and it's 3 in the morning and somebody wants to do testing, and you're like, man, he wants to loop back VLAN 200. I don't know what the repercussions are. I don't know if this is going to bring down my management, if I got other things on that VLAN. So you can just say, okay, I'm just going to do it for 1 minute. If something bad happens, in another minute I'm back in the unit and I can go back and take a look at it. So if you're not sure of what the impact of the loopback you're about to do is, just give yourself a little bit of protection, put a timeout. That way you don't have to get in the truck and go drive there to reboot the unit to turn the loopback off. Okay. Now over here, persistent, what that is, that means even if somebody turns off and turns on the unit, that loopback's still there. Okay. Why would you want to use persistent? If you bought a test set that's not down here, let's say you bought an Inritsu test set, you got a good price on it, so you bought it. And then you go, oh man, what am I going to do? It's not on the list. Well, you'd create a filter with the MAC address or the OUI of the Inritsu test set, put a loopback using that MAC address, and just leave it on there all the time. So that way, whenever it receives the traffic from that test set, it'll loop it back. So we do have customers that use that on different types of test sets. Or some customers have made their own traffic generators, have made their own test sets in Linux. And they get a 10 gig Ethernet card and a couple of programmers from I don't know where, and they build their own test sets. And then they come back and say, we got packet loss. Are you sure it's not your test set? So that's for the loopback. So OEM is important for loopbacks. Okay. Next tab is the service OEM. So in the service OEM, this is where we got our two buddies here, CFM, Y1731, and PAA, which is the Performance Assurance Agent. So let's take a look at these two here. CFM, what do we got? We got the CFM stack, we got the MD, which is the maintenance domain, we got the MEG, which is the maintenance group, we got the maintenance endpoint, we got the delay measurements, packet loss, simulated packet loss, and default configuration. So we've got quite a bit of configuration to do there on CFM. And if I go to PAA, basically all I got is configuration, stats, and results. So I configure it, I get my stats and my results. I remember on all my Cisco training, they always said proprietary is better. I didn't always agree with them, but it often is simpler. There's less steps to configure it, and it's a bit more flexible. But at the end of the day, if you're using this, you have to have a NID at both sides. Okay? So let's just take a quick look at setting up a PAA. So here I got 2 units that are set up right now. And let me just log back into this guy here. What port? So SFPB is up over here on my network port. SFPB is up on my network. So right now, we're talking here, this port here is network. This port here is network. And what we'll do is right now we're going to set up a PAA from there to there. So a performance assurance agent to find out what the delay is between these 2 sites. And I know you're saying, oh man, it's almost lunchtime, this looks complicated, it's going to take a lot of time. Don't worry, it won't take a lot of time. So we'll come on to this unit here, Service OEM, go to PAA, and basically we're going to add. And let's call it this one. Enable the probe. Let's put it on a VLAN. Let's put it on VLAN 2000 for fun. And let's check it on priority 7. That's the one we care about. And the outgoing port is network. So that's it. So I gave it a name, what VLAN, what priority, what port I'm going out on, and I apply. Let's go to the other guy. And we'll add this. So we'll call it the same name. This is very important to name. Enable that. VLAN ID. And I think we said priority 7. Outgoing port should be network. Yeah, it's on the network. And apply. So if we look at the status, it says associated. That means it found the other side. Go to the other one over here. Status. Associated. Now here we have an A, that's an alarm. All these are inactive. And the excessive packet loss is active because this guy was up before the other guy was up. So he was sending packets and not receiving for a few minutes. And if I go to results, so you see down here, we see some numbers starting to come in. So we've had 42 samples go by so far. And right now I just have a piece of fiber between those 2 units. So we can see my delay between these 2 units is 0. Now, that's kind of important that it's 0 because really all I have right now, right here, is a fiber between these 2 units. So the fact that we're measuring 0 means we're not taking into account what's happening over here in this unit while the packets are being measured, or what's happening over here. We're really measuring the wire, what's happening in between the 2 units. And as you saw, you know that was just a few clicks.